Like, I don't know, it's weird of a 40-year-old dude to critique the chemistry of a couple of teenage lesbians. Iron Brains, a podcast that's here this week. What the hell more do you want from us? My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing, Lori?
No.
Lori's...
No.
Tonight is Monday, February 27th. 2023. It'll be our last podcast in February, Abe.
Yeah, another fast month.
I think that gives us four February podcasts. Not bad for a 4-week month.
Yeah, maximized all the Mondays.
We've been pretty consistent lately here
That's
with
right.
shows. Episode, I think this is going to be number 133 or something like that. We're creeping up on equaling the total number of episodes that we had in the first run. And we might have already surpassed it, actually. I'll have to double check that. But we've podcasted longer now than we did in the first run. We're coming up on nearly 3 years of the second edition of the podcast.
That's right.
Anyway, what did you do this weekend, Dave? Anything exciting?
Not much. I was just hanging out with some of the people that are on the other podcast. We recorded on Saturday, and we hung out the rest of the day. Just, that.
Exciting times. We had our first interaction with spring baseball. We had tryouts for the boy to possibly get into the major leagues in our little league situation here.
Major Little League.
Not sure exactly if he belongs necessarily in the major leagues or if I would prefer it if he was in the minor leagues, which is where I will be coaching our daughter, and the Cherry Bombs will ride again for the third season in a row.
Not if you don't have red shirts.
I will get the red shirts. Christina will give me the red shirts.
Okay.
I got a lot of sway with these people, and I'm getting the goddamn red shirts. We will be the Cherry Bombs again. I would prefer it if he was down in our league, but we'll see how that goes.
Trying out, was this something that was available to Calvin last year, or just the first opportunity
Great question,
to do this?
Abe.
Yeah,
Bob loves talking about this.
This is a complete disaster, the way that this is handled. As longtime listeners of the show, of course, will remember my consistent bitching about the administration and bureaucracy of our local Little League.
There's not that much
affiliated
bureaucracy.
group.
It would be more organized if there was bureaucracy.
It probably needs another layer of
That's
bureaucracy.
It needs bureaucracy. Right now, it's chaos.
is part of the problem.
You're saying bureaucracy the way people say millennial to mean like young person I don't like.
Also, no one actually ever says bureaucracy in a non-derogatory way, right? It's usually like presented in a negative light. No one ever says bureaucracy in a positive light.
Bureaucracy is the millennial of types of organization.
This is just a very poorly run bureaucracy is the issue. It's not not in the way that, like, say, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy critique of bureaucracy would be like, it's overcomplicated and officious and like a bunch of Byzantine rules and you no idea what's ever happening. This is just a chaotic and poorly run bureaucracy. Anyway,
it's not.
Don't need to get bogged down in the details here, but I will on this other question, which is how the tryouts are run. Here, picture this, Abe. You have a little league facility. There are 3 different baseball fields at this facility. There's even a batting cage, like with a net over it, where you can do pitching or hitting practice, where you're just isolated, like under the net, so that the ball doesn't go all over the place or whatever. Not like a top tier. We're not talking. It's a little parcel of land out by the highway that has some grass and dirt infields. Like, it's fine. It's great for a municipal sort of situation, right? Not one of these fancy, like highfalutin private school rich kid kind of baseball field situations. But a perfectly fine facility. Great. It's America right there. You have to love it. But what they do, instead of taking advantage of this very large area with all sorts of different pitchers' mounds and infields and places to evaluate talent, instead they take all 40 or 50 kids who showed up for tryouts that day and basically put them in a line and then very slowly throw one by one. We're going to throw 10 pitches at you, and that will determine what we think about your ability to hit the ball and then determine what league you end up in. Right. And then an hour later, you're going to receive 3 ground balls and 2 pop flies, and that will be it. Yes. That will be the entirety of the evaluation process. And 40 or 50 kids will just be lined up against the fence or sitting on the bench in the dugout watching all of the other kids do this while like 7 or 8 fat, overweight men who shouldn't be out there on the baseball field.
Objection, relevance.
Take notes on their ability to play the game of baseball, with the idea being that as coaches at the major league level, we will determine which of these kids we want to draft onto our team and which kids we would prefer to just allow to go languish in the minor leagues with the likes of coaches like me. And like, it drives me crazy because first of all, it's completely poorly organized by the league commissioner, and this appears to be his only function in the entire league. The only time I've heard his voice in the 3 years or 2 years of being in this league is at this event. It's the only time that we see him or hear from him ever is when he's in charge of running this event, and it's utter chaos and a complete waste of time, and I have no idea why they do it the way that they do it. When like you're talking about 9 to 12-year-old children, it's not like there's some sort of 30-point scout scale in terms of like if the guy's got 5 or 6 tools or if he's a plus player or whatever the fuck. Like none of that. There should be 3 evaluation criteria, which is there should be a negative, a neutral, and a positive, right? It's like a kid who can barely pick a ball up off the ground and throw it to another kid. That gets a -1, right? Then we have the neutrals, are kids who are like can sort of throw a baseball back and forth. And then we have a kid who's like, oh, a baseball player. Like, oh, look at that. Yeah. A baseball player. That gets the positive. That should be the entire evaluation critique. And like, you want to look at them pitch, we want to look at them field. Then like we have the facilities to set up different stations and have enough adults run those stations so that kids are always doing something, and it takes like half the amount of time. Okay. Like that, and that would really help too. Instead, they run it like this, and it's just a disaster.
So just is the main criticism that the assessment process isn't thorough enough, or it's too thorough?
You heard the main criticism. The main criticism is that it's poorly organized.
Okay, so the organization is sloppy, and because I'm wondering.
And also, I completely reject the idea that any evaluation in a meaningful way actually takes place, because we're talking about literally. It's not even a set 10 pitches. It's just like whenever the old guy looks up from his notebook long enough to realize that the kid's been up there for some amount of time, and he's like, okay, run out the next one. It's like, okay, great job, guy. We'll have him run out the next one. Like he did, like this kid got 7 pitches, that kid got 12 pitches. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And like for most of these kids, it's somewhere between I haven't ever picked up a bat in my life, and I probably haven't picked up a bat in the last 9 months. Right? You're not learning anything from putting a bat in a kid's hand for the first time in 9 months either. Like, it makes me a little bit crazy.
This whole thing, is it for because it sounds like there's 2 different like leagues, and like the upper, like more advanced level, and just everyone else, right? Do the kids have to try out for both, or just the more advanced one?
They're trying out for the advanced one.
Yeah, this is just to determine whether or not the major league coaches want to bring them up to their league, basically.
So, like, if you couldn't come to tryouts, you're just in minors. You're not playing.
Gotcha.
Right.
So
unless like you're a parent who's like, actually my kid's really good and he should be in the major leagues or something. Like that's the other thing.
Right.
It's like you could probably just trust the parents.
Right. But then to that point, I would imagine that the parents would screen out their child who just doesn't know baseball and just like, I don't know, how do you hold this thing, right? So like there shouldn't be too many of those trying for the more advanced.
But they want to evaluate everyone. Like, in order to make it fair, they demand that everyone be evaluated.
Gotcha.
And part of it is also like they want to have 4 major league teams. So they're going to expand the talent pool and make the major league sort of mean less anyway. And first of all, it's going to cost the minor league. I mean, it sounds silly like to think about what I'm complaining about, but they're going to take kids who probably belong in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Like Calvin he would be very young to be in the major leagues. Like this, he's a young 10, and like as far as the league goes, he's sort of a youngish 10, and also those are 11 and 12-year-olds that he would be playing against. And like, but by the talent, if they're going to have 4 teams at the major league level, he's definitely going to be a quote unquote major leaguer.
Gotcha.
There's no reason for that. He should be with me at the minor league level and be one of the better kids in the entire minor league. But whatever. It's frustrating, and it's one of those things where like we're on the sidelines and I'm commiserating with a couple of the other coaches in the minor league, and also a bunch of parents who I know after a couple of seasons of doing this. And we are all in complete agreement that this is an entirely worthless exercise.
Yeah.
That what we're watching is utterly pointless, and no one can be gaining anything from this. And the only option in terms of fixing it would be like a hostile takeover of league
like a
management
coup?
in some way. Yeah, like there would have to be a coup.
There's no mechanism in place to like.
If it might be volunteering to take over, it might not have to be a hostile coup.
Okay.
It could be just like a, hey, do you want help?
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, yes.
Yeah, relieve them of their duty in a nice.
I don't think that. I mean, these people don't want help. They're perfectly
These people.
happy.
There you go again.
Yeah.
You've already painted them a certain way, Bob. They're bad people.
They're not bad people. They're very well-meaning people.
Right. But would they not be open to? I mean, you don't think if you presented a more organized way to go about it, they would be okay? Oh, didn't think of that. Let's run that next time.
Well, we've been doing it this way for 15 years. Why would you do it any other way?
Because it doesn't work.
What is your problem there? You must be from the city. Anyway, what should we talk about this week, Abe? Anything in the news?
Oh, the usual.
President Carter is still alive.
Still hanging in there. He shall see to March at this point, right?
If I get to this point in the show and I ask Abe what he wants to talk about, it's kind of like getting on the bus and having the bus driver be like, hey, why don't you drive this thing for a little while? I'm going to go sit in the back, and you look at the bus driver like, hey, what are you talking about? You always drive this bus. Get the fuck out of here.
Have you paid attention to the what's going on in Alabama basketball?
I keep getting notifications about it as
basketball.
though I
All
give a shit.
I have a Who Gives a Shit Newsbag Sportsbag Edition planned for later in the show.
Oh, all right.
Let's just do that here.
All right.
Unzip the Who Gives a Shit Newsbag Sportsbag Edition. Abe, what's going on with Alabama
So
basketball?
first of all, maybe because Georgia dethroned Alabama or what, but Alabama's very good at basketball now. They're a basketball school.
Yeah, are they I saw they were the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah,
or something,
one
right?
or two. I think they dropped to 2. But really good team. They have a star player on their roster. And
all it takes in college basketball is having the one.
in the recent past, other members of the same Alabama basketball team got into some sort of confrontation with some locals in Alabama. They asked for the star player, whose name I'm forgetting right now, Miller. He was in, wherever he was, and they asked him, hey, we're getting into this heated exchange. Can you bring my gun so that I can continue this heated exchange? The person, the freshman, the star player, obliges.
No, that was the wrong decision.
People start shooting. A woman gets killed. And
oh, jeez.
Those players are charged.
When was this?
This is in Alabama. Like, this is a couple of months ago. Like,
What recent? Okay.
yeah, so this is a couple of months ago. Anyways, the players, they were kind of like reserved, but their lives are basically over now. They're going to be tried for murder. The star player doesn't get charged with anything because the argument is they didn't know what they were bringing the gun for, and you have a right to have a gun. Basically, they did not charge him with that, like an accomplice or accessory or any sort of like facilitating any one of those
Right.
charges.
Are there any other gun crimes? Do you know if they're like, is this a legally owned weapon? Was it?
So they haven't charged anything on that yet. So I don't know if they'll add to it later. But basically, they just kept it as just a murder for the one who shot and something else for the other basketball player. But the star player, not only no charges, nothing with his basketball career. He's still playing. He, in fact, is doing this very poorly thought out like celebration thing. You know, when they introduce players, you know, everybody has to have like a handshake or like a dance or something.
The finger, like the Yosemite Sam hands in the air?
In a similar vein, but basically he gets one of his teammates to pat him down to demonstrate that he doesn't have the gun, which is in poor taste.
As a reaction to the thing that happened, or was this a pre-existing...
Well, apparently he was doing it for some time before, but he continued to do it since. And people are saying, come on, like you can't stop doing that.
What is?
I don't know. I kind of like it.
I'm coming to this unarmed.
Yes,
is that the idea? I'm going to kill you anyway,
Yeah,
even though I'm
basically,
coming unarmed?
I guess
No, I think that's good. I kind of like that. I don't know why.
But I mean, it's inconceivable that he didn't know that he would bring in the gun for some reason, like, right? And for him to still do this, he is apparently projected to be a top pick, like top 10 in the NBA. And they ask some executives in the NBA, and they say, yeah, they didn't charge him, so it doesn't mean anything. There's no character issues. He'll go where he'll go based on his talent. And he's pretty talented, apparently. But that's Alabama basketball.
Yeah, there you have it.
Cool.
Cast iron brains on the Alabama Crimson Tide basketball team. As long as we're doing basketball, we'll jump to this question of scoring in the National Basketball Association. So, just in the last week or so, there have been 2 games in which each team scored 175 points or more.
Yes.
Now, granted, one of those was at the All-Star game, where nobody plays defense.
But the other one was in regular season action, but it was double overtime, right?
It was double overtime, but I think the regulation game ended at 153 points to 153 points. And then the final score was, after 2 overtime periods, was 176 to 175. Abe, as someone who follows basketball, I mean, I can only explain, it's just so granular detail, the amount of attention that you pay to the beautiful game of basketball, certainly compared to me, which is none attention to the game of basketball, except maybe if Lori is not paying attention when the finals are on, I might be permitted to watch an NBA Finals game or 2 each season. Why is there, and I've read The Athletic article about all of the scoring in basketball, but Abe, why is there so much scoring in basketball?
Well, I mean, the simplest answer is that, I mean, the three-point line has been around for 40-plus years, but especially in the last 10 years, there's been an emphasis on, hey, shoot more of the field goals that are 3 points versus the 2 points, right? Basically, somebody, I guess, used some advanced analytics to determine that 3 points is better than 2 points.
Why did it take so goddamn long for them to figure that out?
Well, I think initially they were, without considering like getting better at the 3 points, they're just saying, well, the percentage of shots made from 3 was worse than 2, so 2 is still a better option. Like if you can more reliably score 2 points, then go with that.
One imagines trying to talk to Shaquille O'Neal and be like, "No, Shaq, you're going to shoot it from like 30 feet away from the basket," and Shaq is standing there under the basket going, "But I can just put it. I could just like take
right
it
there.
and put it and get 2 points."
Yeah.
But instead, you want me to take my 350 pounds and back 30 feet away and try to hurl this ball across the court? That would be foolish of me to do that.
Yeah, basically players have gotten so much better at shooting threes. And anytime, I mean, not only was there this ridiculous 170-point game in regular season action, again, setting aside the All-Star exhibition, there were also like couple of occasions where like 60-plus points were scored by one player or 70 points by one player.
I think Damian Lillard just had a 71-point game a couple days ago,
in like 39 minutes of play, because they're shooting so many three-pointers, and a lot of them are going in. I do wonder if it's like, like war. back in the olden days, they used to just be like, let's get in the field and just shank each other. And then they get better weaponry and they're like further apart. And now we got people in Utah pressing buttons, bombing somebody in Afghanistan, right? So we're getting further and further away.
Correct, Abe. That's great. So that leads to my what is it? Guess as to why there's so much scoring. It's because basketball is a bad game, and I think I've gone on the record saying war is bad
repeatedly.
So so war is bad, and basketball is like war.
Right.
So
I don't share Lori's opinion on one of those two things.
Do you believe that this is a problem? Is there too much scoring in basketball? Should there be less scoring in basketball?
Yes. So there is this scoring inflation problem where it dilutes the game where, why are you watching the first half, first of all? Like, it's like 80-80 at halftime. Like, who cares? I'll just catch it in the fourth quarter.
Are they just not playing? Like, part of this is just like we're not going to bother with defense very much,
problem,
right?
Again,
like got to be some of that.
There is some of that, but also defense in the past, because there was so much emphasis on shooting as close to the net as possible, you can defend players better when they're concentrated over a smaller space, right? But if somebody like Steph Curry is shooting from half court, how are you going to defend that, right? I mean, what are you going to do, right? So they're going to make those. If those go in, there's not much you can defend against. So there is some issues with defense. It's also the rules. There aren't a lot of, hand checking. There are a lot of things in the past you can get away with. You can rough up players a little more. Referees would look the other way, or the rules would allow it. Now you can barely touch them, and so they have a lot of space.
Now, I heard you say a few weeks ago when LeBron James set the all-time scoring record, which we didn't talk about on the show, but LeBron James went to nearly 40,000 points, right? Career point, like 39,000 some odd number of points, and he broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's long-standing a record that has stood for as long as we've been alive, basically. Right? And I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar set that record some 40 years ago. And it took that long for someone to come along and break it. By the way, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a great Substack, and people should go check it out. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. Kareem writes the occasional very interesting essay. He seems like a very thoughtful dude.
Yeah, he's a very thoughtful guy.
And I enjoyed his recent piece about how he was going to be perfectly happy with LeBron James breaking his record, contrary to apparently some media speculation that he was a grumpy old fuck who was pissed off about his record falling.
Why would he be mad about that?
I don't remember why.
What kind of a crazy person would be mad?
You know how these athletes are.
I don't know that athletes are mad when their records are broken. No.
I'm sure
is that a thing?
They put on a brave face. I think I'm sure Kareem is probably upset. Like, I think even people that say they don't care because, like, their identity is wrapped around these achievements.
See, but
right?
that's where Kareem has an advantage over a lot of the, like, he's not the Mr. 3000 Bernie Mac character.
Right.
Like, he's got his identity
character.
isn't wrapped around that particular record, and he's got a lot else going on.
I can name a handful of like classic basketball players.
Yeah.
I don't know which of them have records in anything.
Right.
Like, that's not their legacy.
It's a less important thing in like those guys all know their numbers, but from a pop cultural perspective, like, it's not like baseball where everything is about the statistics and you can rattle off a bunch of numbers. Where Lori and I used to have a fun fight.
The first fight we ever had
about whether
in a real way was about whether or not Hank Aaron's home run number is pop culture knowledge or sports trivia. And I have the advantage of knowing a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds.
You also further have the advantage of the last 20 years of baseball being like a rapidly declining sport
was like
in
20
terms
years
of the
ago.
national conversation.
This was so long ago.
And what I'm saying is that
I
when
asked
we
my
first...
mother, who was alive.
Your mother... I'll leave it at that.
Pop culture. Pop culture. Pop culture is what you're saying it was.
Yeah, it was.
You're wrong.
I think that Hank Aaron...
It's one of your worst takes.
Beating Babe Ruth's record was a pop cultural moment, and especially when it happened, 714 being eclipsed by 715 was something that the average pop culture knower of the time would have on hand, and maybe even the number 755, which was Hank Aaron's eventual total. Further, it was maybe a more difficult piece of pop culture trivia, but a piece of pop culture trivia nonetheless. And not
you didn't
simply
call it pop culture trivia.
Not
you
simply
said
a
it
piece
was
of
common
sports
knowledge.
trivia information.
Pop culture knowledge. Everybody knows Michael Jackson sang Thriller and Hank Aaron hit 755 home runs. That's Bob. Really in touch.
Although I guess that's a pretty legitimate argument because, like, you're right. I mean, like, what would be a good comp then? I mean, is Babe Ruth pop culture or sports? Like, I mean, like,
yes, Babe Ruth
so
from The Sandlot is pop culture.
Crosses over. So you need some
Name a baseball player.
Right.
Babe Ruth.
Right.
What were we talking about?
Something about basketball.
Right. So-
Can we talk about baseball still?
I do think on the basketball front, it is a problem, this high-scoring thing. I likened it to the NBA needs to have like a Jerome Powell type. There should be some sort of tools available to the league to bring down, kind of like the high inflation, to bring down inflation, bring down the scoring inflation down through the rules.
All right, I got a solution for you. As everybody knows, I'm a great basketball knower. And my solution is elegant and beautiful, and the answer is goalkeepers. All right, so
I like it. I like any change to this game.
Instead of 5-on-5, what you have is 5-on-5 with somebody who just hangs out and guards the basket. So it's on offense, it's 5-on-6. For both offenses, you're actually down a man. It's a permanent power play for the defense. That will reduce scoring, certainly. You spread out all you goddamn want. We're going to put 2 dudes on Steph Curry so he can, if he wants to launch from the logo, then he's welcome to, but It's not going to work out for him.
My idea, I've walked away from an idea that I came up with a while ago, which was kind of like almost like a circuit breaker. Like it should be an upper limit of 3 points counted. And if you go above it, everything is 2 points, and then it would encourage everybody to go back closer to the net and more old school basketball. But there are too many problems. The more I thought about it, like, well, what if the team is behind and they're trying to catch up and they've already hit their limit? Like, it would have been a little too convoluted. But something to like discourage so much shooting from like that far of a distance, because
it seems like they have to allow more fouling. Like they need to allow more defensive touching and not call as many fouls.
Right. Yeah. Basically, they need to have fewer. Allow a rougher form of basketball to come into play. That kind of kept things honest,
Yeah, that would be better too. Whenever I watch basketball, which sometimes it's on, and I'm like, what? What is? You're not allowed to touch? And Bob's like, oh yeah, you're not allowed to. You can't touch.
I do wonder
Fuck.
if they change a shot clock, if they went from 24 to 35, kind of the opposite. Because college basketball, the problem is that they're just dragging. Nobody was scoring. You'd have these weird like 45, 42 final scores in basketball.
You're describing the University of Virginia basketball team.
Yeah, everybody hates it.
But like have it to, because if those of out there who watch basketball, you'll notice that as soon as one team scores, they're within half a second, they're already halfway the other way attempting to score. And within like 5 seconds, they have another opportunity to score on the other side. The pace of play is way too fast. So like if you encourage, hey, take your time. What's the hurry? Set up the play.
So you predicted, the reason that I brought up LeBron's scoring record is that you predicted that we would never see LeBron's, he'll finish with some 42,000 points or something like that. But assuming he plays for another couple of years. You said that there's no way that we will ever see that record fall. In the same way that most people our age, back when Kareem retired, wouldn't have seen that record fall, that grown-ass adults now will not see LeBron's record fall. Do you think that, I know that you're going to hold to that position.
Of
you
course.
only made this prediction 3 weeks ago. No change in position with the wild amount of scoring that's happening?
The wild amount of scoring is, at a team level, and yes, you'll have your Lillards and like other players who will score 50, 60, 70 points in a particular game. What LeBron has done, he's done for like 20 years at this level.
Very, very consistent and productive. And in fact, even with the last couple of years of being on very shitty Lakers teams,
he's still producing.
Still producing big numbers. But as you know the answer to this, how many 3-point attempts did Kareem Abdul-Jabbar have in his entire career, and how many did he make? How many points did he score off of the 3-pointer? Do you recall?
I believe he made 1 of 9 or 1 of something.
I believe it was one of 10 total shots that he took from beyond the arc. Because, of course, he didn't play his whole career with a three-point line, but he did play, I think, 9 or 10 seasons, and he averaged 1 3-point attempt per year in his last 10 years in the league, and only made one of them. Right. So he managed to accumulate nearly 40,000 points with just one of those baskets coming from the three-point line or beyond. LeBron James has sort of straddled two eras here, where you sort of have the pre-Steph Curry NBA, where the three was, yes, it was on the rise, but it wasn't fucking crazy yet. And then you have the last 5 or 6 years or so where everybody's just hurling up threes all the time. Why in the world, where we've gone from there not being a 2-point shot, or there not being a 3-point shot, to nobody really taking the 3-point shot, to now all of the analytics say, hey, you idiots, just spread out and take the 3-point shot. Why would we not end up with some future superstar of the Steph Curry variety who's able to stay healthy for 20 years and just rack up far more points than LeBron James would be?
If somebody could play for 20 years at a high clip, yes. But what I'm saying is, it is such a outlier that LeBron's like a robot. I'm sure if they did like a thing and it turned out he's like not actually human, I would believe it.
Is he Chat GPI?
Yeah, maybe that,
GPT, you know. Yeah. If he wasn't human, they would have given him better hair.
Right. Also, probably. That's true. But maybe they had to cut some corners. That was like a side effect. You know, like that
no, you have to make it realistic.
What was that weight loss drug? That weight loss drug that made your face all...
Ozempic.
Yeah, so there's a cost. And also, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but LeBron and Steph were born in the same hospital. If that hospital turned out to be some sort of weird government-owned thing...
born in the same hospital.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Out of the same Chinese lab, no doubt.
Yeah.
But what I'm
saying... Where DeMar Hamlin is now.
I don't think there will be... Like, Steph Curry, I don't think is going to play for 18, 20... Because he'll need to get to that level... And if they do it,
no,
then
I don't think it's going to be Steph Curry. I just think that the way that the game is played, the fact that it's changed so dramatically in the last few years. Like, I'm not saying that there's going to be a ton of dudes who are going to definitely break the record. Right. But like, I think it's silly to say that we won't see somebody do it.
Not in our lifetime.
All right.
Can we talk about baseball rules changing?
Yeah, we'll do with. We're just a month away now, a little bit more than a month, or right at a month away from the first game of the Major League Baseball season, which I think the opening day this year is March 30th, and all 30 teams will be playing on opening day for the first time since, I think the number is 1968. I think this is the first time.
Why has that been a problem?
It's not been a problem. They just haven't arranged the schedule that way.
Did the Reds used to have like some sort of like noteworthy thing to start the years, or?
Yeah, it was sort of a tradition, I think, for the Reds, and there was a time in the last few years where I think they've played a couple of opening series in Japan, or other, like maybe Mexico City or something, other international sites. I don't know. This year it's all 30 teams, March 30th, ready to go, and of course we're all excited for that. And by all of us, I mean me.
I'm excited. You know who told me about these new rules coming? Some client of mine, not my husband.
Look at that.
Of note.
Don't sit around discussing the finer points of Major League Baseball rule changes, I guess.
I do at work with other
here.
dudes.
What other rule? I only know one of. Is there more than one? Because
There's so much.
I read that apparently if you take too long, it can count as a strike.
Right. So we'll start there. The first rule change that's going to have the most profound impact on the game as it is played is the pitch clock and what amounts to a batter's clock as well. This is from the New York Times write-up of this. In 2021, an average game set a record at 3 hours and 11 minutes. The average game was 2 hours, 44 minutes in 1985, which is, of course, a fairly significant difference, and it's largely blamed on the dilly-dallying that takes place between pitches. And there are numerous examples of players through the years who stand out for the amount of goddamn time that they take.
Who was the worst, by the way? I remember Nomar
Nomar Garciaparra is the one that everybody goes to, but he's by no means alone. But Nomar's routine was as obnoxious as and Rafa Nadal is my favorite tennis player of all time, probably. But watching Rafa prepare to serve when it's like we're 3 games into a 5-set match in the second round of the U.S. Open, and it's like there are 5.5 more hours of tennis, Rafa.
Right.
You need to serve the goddamn ball. And he's just bouncing it for 20 minutes.
It's funny because it doesn't bother me when a pitcher does it, but the tennis people, it bothers me more.
Do you think it's strategery? Like it's a
No,
very
they're-
cardio-intensive
a lot of the
kind
time
of.
it absolutely is. They're trying to throw off each other's rhythms.
Right.
There's pitcher can step off the mound and throw to first base, or just step off the mound and give the signal to the catcher to do the signs again. The batter steps up. The batter can pretend that there's a bug in his face and he swats at the air and has to step off and readjust the batting gloves and all that shit. They're trying to fix that because the idea has been in the past, the umpires just need to handle it. Hey, if you see a guy who's taking too much time, fucking say something to him, or get his ass in the box one way or another. But it just wasn't working. We've ceded too much power to players. So one way to take that power back is to put a clock up behind the pitcher and put a clock up behind the batter so that the pitcher can see the pitch clock and the batter can see the pitch clock. And pitchers will have 15 seconds with the bases empty and 20 seconds with a runner on. They must begin their motion in that time or a ball will be called. So that is from the time that they get the ball back from the catcher. So they receive the ball back from the catcher. Then somebody upstairs clicks the button and the clock starts and they have 15 seconds. Along with that, the batter must be ready for the pitch, must make eye contact with the pitcher by the 8-second mark or be assessed a strike. And I'm going to play now a clip from the Braves' first preseason game over the weekend. This will be the Boston Red Sox television broadcast of it because the Braves was just on radio, and I want everyone to be able to see it here. All right, so the Braves and Red Sox were playing their first preseason game of the year. It was 6-3, I believe, going into the bottom of the ninth. The Braves put 3 runs on the board to make it 6-6, had the bases loaded with 2 outs, and young, I believe his name is Cal Conley, who's a second baseman not likely to make the major league team this year, I don't believe, comes to the plate and works the count full. So we have a full count, bottom of the ninth, 6-6 is the score.
Drama builds in the Grapefruit League and viewed nationwide.
Do you feel it?
2-2 pitch. Just off the edge with the split, and it's a full count.
John Luke. You got to give me this pitch. I don't know if he just loves the drama or what, but maybe just a little bit off the plate, but could have rung him up easily. Uh-oh.
And now what?
He's out.
They have called strike 3. Wow!
It makes me nauseous.
Automatic strike 3 called with the bases loaded.
This is the opposite of stealing first.
Of the ninth. This is baseball in 2023.
Oh, the 2-strike strikeout. That's it. 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. 3-2. Bases are juiced, and he wasn't alert in time.
They made baseball
and
more
punch him
boring.
out.
Congrats.
Wow.
The player on replay, they finally do show it. He doesn't look up to make eye contact with the pitcher until there are 7 seconds left on the clock. He doesn't even dilly-dally. He's just in the box. He's standing there at the plate, but he doesn't raise his eyes to look at the pitcher until there's 7 and then maybe approaching 6 if you really slow it down, seconds left on the clock. And so the umpire throws up his hands and says, "You're out." And that's the end of the fucking game because it's preseason and they don't play extra innings in spring training. This is obviously something that hopefully won't occur very often.
Especially
by the time
in the
we get to the
playoffs
regular season.
or the World Series,
Right.
yeah.
This is anathema to the sport of baseball as far as I'm concerned. And I appreciate to some extent this, we need to speed the game up because, I agree. Watching, is the classic example is a Yankees-Red Sox game on ESPN on a Sunday night. Opening pitch is 8:05. And if you want to watch the whole game, you're going to be up past midnight every fucking time. Those games would drag on for fucking forever. And the fact that the National League has gone to a full-time designated hitter also, and a designated hitter just extends the game because pitchers have tend to have shorter at-bats against pitchers because pitchers are bad hitters, right? So it's sort of an easier number of outs. There's more in the traditional National League game. There'd be more sacrifice bunts or like attempts at playing small ball, which is just moving the runner along, that sort of thing. So as the National League game has just become the American League game, those games got longer as well, which is another reason that the average game length got longer. And I'm fine with that. But like this idea that we're going to materially affect at-bats and games because of it is not okay with me. I would much rather there was some sort of a fine system in place or a warning system or something. But like it, in the same way that it was silly to me that they had the World Series home field advantage used to hinge on the result of the All-Star game. Like the idea that you didn't, it's that level of arbitrary in like relative to what's actually happening on the field. And it's not okay. I'm not okay with it.
Were there other ideas floated around? Because, to your point, like a warning system, like, for instance, everyone's favorite sport, soccer, where they kick the ball around. They have the yellow
red card system.
And when they play in tournaments, it can carry over like 2 yellows or whatever. Like, if there's a way to get the point across, because I think most people would agree, especially if they show the chart like in 1985 or 1990, it took this many minutes for an average game to end, and now it's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes longer, right? And so we want to go back to the way it was, make baseball great again or whatever. But this is too punitive a way to do it. And so maybe come up with some sort of warning and then, I don't know what, like a punishment, like a fine, or get rid of the player for the rest of the game. Maybe that's also too punitive. But there's got to be some way, because you can kind of see how a game could be decided on this when it's like a pivotal game in the playoffs or the World Series.
Right, and like I don't know what is or is not reviewable when it comes to this situation, but like if the umpire, like, because like you watch an NFL game and we know that the play clock is actually expired, but they quote unquote they got it off in time, right? Before, it's not like there's some sort of buzzer that sounds and that's just the end of it. With this, there are going to be umpires who aren't as quick on the trigger as other umpires. This will be another way that we evaluate umpires.
Yeah.
And like I wonder how that's going to function. Some umpires are going to give guys that 8-7 second window or whatever, and then therefore also give the pitcher maybe an extra second on the back end. I mean, whatever. Like I definitely am fine with this encouragement of keeping assholes in the box, because as a baseball fan, it drives me nuts when it takes 45 seconds, like, because there are 45 seconds to a minute sometimes between pitches. Obviously, it gets much more intense in the playoffs, too. I don't know how this is going to fly in the playoffs, where everything just sort of gets drawn out naturally. There's a fun article with Max Scherzer, the Mets guy, used to be a Washington Nationals pitcher. He's always played for teams that I hated, but I've had no choice but to like the guy, unfortunately, because he's just a fucking maniac out there. And I really like maniacs when it comes to my sports stars. And he's talking about like how much fun he's having with the 15-second pitch clock, because by the letter of the law, as soon as that guy's eyes come up, he's allowed to throw the ball. So he's standing there just like waiting for the guy to look up so he can then rear back. And
so, okay, shouldn't that be the solution then? I initially thought maybe this was too goofy of an answer, but if somebody else is kind of gaming around it, okay, the 15 seconds, 8 seconds thing, the idea is that you don't want the hitter to deprive the pitcher of their time to take action, because once it hits 0, then the pitcher is now on the hook. So if you had it to where we're not going to call it a strike after 8 seconds, but after 8 seconds, it's fair game. If the pitcher is ready at 8 and you're still fucking fumbling with your whatever, he throws it down. That's it's a strike. That's a strike, right?
That's way better.
That way.
Also, you can steal first.
I think that they had to. They wanted to make a rule where they have to have a situation where they're meting out punishments equally to both pitcher and hitter. So they're like, okay, so if the batter doesn't look up, then we got to give him a strike, and if the pitcher isn't ready to go, then he gets a ball and that sort of thing. But I think that yours is probably closer to which is good. Like, stay in the goddamn box, be ready, and if you're not ready, then
it's on you.
They're just going to throw a strike at your face.
You should be able to throw a pitch whenever you want.
Right. Because, I mean, currently...
So, like, also, you should be able to take off to first base whenever you want.
Right. Maybe in future seasons they should implement that. But currently, as it's written, do you have to maintain the gaze? Like, if you meet the 8 seconds, right, and you're looking up, and then you're just, like, back to fumbling, like, at 6 seconds.
Then you're assumed to be ready.
Okay.
So you have to be ready at 8 seconds.
Okay.
Which is another thing that I don't like about the rule, which is the same thing that I don't like about the 4-pitch walk, where you don't actually have to throw the 4 pitches, right? So a few years ago, they introduced the just raise 4 fingers, and the guy gets to go to first base for the intentional walk. Whereas in the old days, the pitcher had to stand there and literally throw 4 balls, and he would try to throw them significantly off the plate.
So and on rare occasions, there'll be an errant throw, but it's usually uneventful, right?
On rare occasions, it would result in an actual baseball play, right? Where it would go near enough to the plate for the batter to reach out and take a stab at it, or it would fly over the catcher's fucking head and go to the backstop, and whoever was on base could start running around like crazy people. It was sports, and raising 4 fingers from the dugout and saying he can just go to first base is the opposite of sports. In a similar fashion, you shouldn't just be assessed a strike because your eyes weren't forward. If you get to 8 seconds and Max Scherzer sees that you're not looking yet, he just throws the ball. And if it's a strike, then you call it a fucking strike. But insisting that, like, because you weren't technically ready at the time, it's automatically a strike, that's not sports. That's something else. Anyway, it's a bad rule in trying to solve a real problem, and I recognize that. And, like, it's only Ronald Acuna Jr. is guilty of it. There's plenty of my favorite baseball players who are guilty of dicking around too long before they're ready to play baseball.
I like the suspense. I hate how long things take, but also it builds the suspense. It's what basketball entirely lacks, is any amount of suspense.
Situational,
This is all also, they made the bases bigger, which is good.
I mean, there's still going to be suspense.
People aren't like stepping on each other. Is that, by the way, on that point, Lori and Bob, did they change the size of the place just so that they're not like stepping on each other?
Yeah, so I don't have to watch Tim Hudson's ankle get broken again.
So that's basically like a safety.
I think I said it was unpleasant
last week or the week before that they changed first base and third base. That was wrong. They changed all 3 of the bases in the field. They also changed second base. So they went from 15 inches on each side of the square to 18 inches on each side of the square.
I feel like it's fine.
3 square inches or 3 inches bigger on each side of the base, and that it's fine. It's what it's going to do is it's going to make the stolen base a slightly more easy play to accomplish, because I mean, it sounds silly, but that's 6 inches, right? You're already now 6 inches closer to second base when you have your toe on first base. I mean, it's not nothing.
Especially when you see those slow-mo, like at second base, and it's like very, very close. Like that could be the difference. Yeah,
and apparently it will help. They think it's going to help with player safety stuff. The alternative, I guess, was to put like a ghost base on the foul side of first base, the way that you sometimes see in like Little League or softball leagues or something like that. Like if you have a beer softball league, a lot of times you don't actually have to hit real first base when you're running down the field. You instead have to hit the first base that's next to first base.
Like parallel to it.
That's right next to it, but in foul territory. And that would have been another solution, but less aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, it would look weird. Have they, in other sports, they will test these things out at the lower level. Did this get a shot like in the minors to see how the 8 seconds,
yes,
0
they
seconds?
did this. I think they did both of these rules in the minors in the last couple of years.
Okay, so maybe it's just weird, because it made a lot of. I just kept on reading about, especially that play that you just played a second ago. I wonder if it won't be a thing. Like in May, like looking back at it, like, oh, everybody kind of figured it out, they adjusted, and it has no real impact on the game. Do you think it's going to be one of those, like, all the players figured it out, they're going to look up and the pitcher...
Overwhelmingly, by the time we get to June, this won't be a problem.
Okay.
It will happen from time to time, and I don't think it'll be a problem. Again, I think it's going to be most interesting when it comes to sort of end of the season and playoff games where the stakes are raised unnaturally high, and it's harder to get people to work under that sort of pressure at 15-second clips.
How many minutes, I know this is just going to be one season, how many minutes do you expect that this will shave? Like 5 minutes?
So I was looking at something that Jason Stark said about that, and I'll pull it up now so I don't get it wrong, but I think it's like, on average, these games have been 25 minutes faster.
Wow, look at that.
Than the same games played last year. And yeah, all right, so Jason Stark, one more update on the impact of the pitch timer. Average game time is down 22 minutes so far. Last spring, it was 3 hours and 1 minute. This spring, 2 hours, 39 minutes.
Wow, look at that. Get it to 2.5 hours? That'd be great.
Yeah, and like, believe me, I love short baseball games. The greatest thing in the world growing up watching the Braves was knowing that when Greg Maddux was going to pitch, you could be in for like an hour, 45-minute baseball game because he was going to work quickly. There were going to be a lot of ground balls, and you were going to be done in just a couple of hours. And I'm all for that. I'm just not sure that the punitive way that they're handling it is necessarily correct. All right. Also on that same exact front, you have a rule that states that the pitcher, in order to save time as well, can only throw over to first base or like when you're holding a runner on, you can't endlessly throw over. So one of the most obnoxious things
that I support. I like that.
That fans do is when a pitcher for the opposing team throws over to first base, the entire crowd starts booing lustily.
Yes.
Right? And like maybe they let
you.
the first one go, but if you throw over a second time to protect, to try to protect and keep the guy from stealing second base on you, you will be booed lustily by the home crowd. And like to the point where sometimes I think the home crowd even boos their own pitchers for this.
They
like
do.
It's become such a thing.
What started it? Like, what is the motivation behind it? Because I always find it amusing when people.
It's
because throw the ball. Do
you
your
fucking
job.
Pussy. Throw the ball. You
Just
coward.
throw the ball.
Do
the
they think
guy's
that
not going anywhere, or he's. This is a probability thing. He's either gonna go or he's not. Just pitch.
But do you think that it's like, do they think it's like unbecoming, or you're trying to sneak your way into an out, like you're not doing it the right way? Like
just boring.
It's like
Right, but it's also entirely hypocritical because like one of the loudest cheers you'll hear in a game, barring somebody hitting a triple, which is like the most exciting play in baseball, is when there's a dude just tearing ass around the field for third base, is when you get a pickoff. Like everybody freaks the fuck out. Like, oh man,
That's what I'm talking about.
that fucking idiot. That idiot was leaning too much.
How often is someone picked off at first base compared to other stolen bases?
I don't know what the pickoff rate is. It's very low.
It's so low. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Right.
It's not worth doing. Just throw the pitch. What happens though? They can't. They can only throw over there how many times?
You can disengage. You're allowed to step off the mound or throw over to attempt to chase a runner back twice. So you can't.
What happens after that? Do you have to just let the guy go?
It's
but
called
at
a
that
balk.
point, I mean,
they award the base runner the next base.
So at this point, teams are gonna exhaust those two attempts just so that they can have the opportunity. Like they'll just kind of take off from first, or just gonna get a lead first, just to draw one or two, and then they know you're not gonna do anything, and so
right. I mean, so as sort of annoying as the rule is, it's going to encourage steals, and that's good. Like that,
yeah.
It's fun for there to be more action on the base paths. And all of these rules encourage more action. Like Rob Manfred sucks, and I don't like him tinkering with the game. But at least like the idea is to speed up the game and have there be more action. The last rule that's worth talking about is the end of the defensive shift. So you've seen a trend.
This one I don't understand.
Baseball over the course of the last few years, where teams, even the ones that don't shift all that often, are like we're shifting something like 30% of the time. And the most shift-heavy teams were shifting like well over 50% of the time. And that what a defensive shift usually has been that you pull one of your infielders to the other side from where they are normally lined up to the pull side of the infield. So if you have a right-handed batter up who frequently pulls the ball, like much more often hits it to the same side as the field where he is standing relative to the plate, which I don't know why I feel compelled to explain what a pull hitter means to someone who doesn't already know. But
to your audience,
I mean,
you're explaining it to my mother, and you're not explaining it well enough.
We have a very broad audience, Bob. You have to explain it to everybody.
That's right. So normally what you would see, let's say a left-handed hitter comes up, like Matt Olson, the Braves first baseman who they signed, had his first year last year. He is almost a pure pull hitter. He hits the ball towards right field the overwhelming majority of the time. He's a left-handed hitter, so he's up there on the right side of the plate relative if you're looking at it from above. And he hits it to right field. So the defensive shift for Matt Olson would be to bring usually the third baseman all the way across the field and have him stand in shallow right field, past the infield dirt and in the grass behind the infield. And that gives you 3 defenders on the right side of the infield to try to prevent anything that's hit on the ground or lined softly towards right field to allow your players to collect the ball. And what it has done is it has depressed the offense, right? Because you can figure out the tendencies of every major league player because the sample sizes are fucking humongous, right? Like you're going to have 500-600 at bats in a season, and you play for many years, and you develop tendencies. You know what's going to happen with the ball based on probability, and you align your defense accordingly. That's gone away. All 4 infielders must be on the dirt or the infield grass when the pitcher begins his motion, and each team has to have 2 infielders on each side of second base. So you cannot line up with 3 dudes on one side either.
So I don't like this rule change, because maybe it's not an apt comparison, but like to me it sounds like, hey, defenses, you can only run so many blitzes, right? In the NFL, right? I mean, there's a cost. I know that there are these trends. Certain players hit a certain way many times, right? And so you're taking a pretty safe risk of shifting, right? But there's still a risk. Like if the ball goes another way, you leave the one side of the field totally exposed, and then you suffer the consequences for it. I would prefer a slightly different thing where could they not have limited it to the side of the inning? Whatever posture you take in that inning, you can change it per player, right? So if you do some goofy thing, that's it. That position is where you have to be for all 3 outs.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just think like your players can go wherever the hell they want to go on the field, and that should be fine.
Yeah, that's weird.
The reason that those players are where they are most of the time is because you want them basically evenly spaced out on the field, because the ball could go anywhere theoretically, right? So like if you think that you're so smart that you know where the ball's going to go, like good fucking luck. And by the way, like Matt Olson, it sounds like old man shouting at clouds stuff when I say this, but in a crucial situation, Matt Olson should be able to lay a fucking bunt down and hit it to the left side of the infield where there's nobody within 150 feet of the ball if he can get it past the pitcher. And then everybody runs like crazy. Like the reaction to the defensive shift should be on the hitter to be able to adjust his game. And like it shouldn't be on some rulemaking committee.
But I guess they kind of let it run its course, and they're like, I guess not enough hitters were taking advantage of the open space, because there's these players are just so they have these tendencies, and there was no way around it.
I know that the baseball rule book is thick, and it sounds silly for me to say like I don't like messing with the purity of the baseball rules, because it is. It's like it's this weird arcane thing where there are a billion things to know, and you watch a baseball game, and it's like I've been watching baseball my whole life, and I think I have a pretty solid grasp of the rules, and there will be like a dozen times before the All-Star break where I have to look something up, or like something will happen on the baseball field, and I'll be like, oh, but that should be what is the rule on the boundary exactly? Like I don't remember like how exactly does this work? But at the same time, like the game is relatively simple. You put 8 guys out there in the field, and one of them throws a ball at a catcher behind the plate, and the other guy holds a bat and tries to whack it, and like that's it. And then, like trying to force people to take certain defensive alignments seems counter to the spirit of the game.
Entirely an outcome-based kind of thing. Like it's not a sound process that they're implementing, but they just want to, goose up the offense or whatever.
Right, and this isn't Little League. Like if I was in Little League and I know that this kid, there's a 0% chance that he's going to pull the ball because he's a little squirt and he's like 5 years old, and like it's literally impossible that he's going to pull the ball, and I put my entire defense on the infield and also on the right side. Like, that would be poor sportsmanship, right? That would be shitty. But, like, this isn't that. This is Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And if somebody's getting paid $25 million a year, he should be able to put the ball on the ground on the left side in order to produce for his team. Anyway, I think that's all of the major rule changes.
By the way, this is a side note to the point you were making earlier about how there are so many rules in baseball. And this is just all the different sports. The reason why I am always in defense of the referees is because it is very difficult to get everything right when so many things are happening so fast, especially like at the professional level. And every once in a while, a umpire or a ref will call something, some rarely called thing. It's like they had that top of mind that this thing that they never called in like the last 5 seasons. Like they called. It's like, holy shit, you knew that? You're just waiting.
It is their entire job at that level, though.
I know, but it's still remarkable that they're able to.
Yeah, it's impressive, but also they fucking better. That is their whole job.
Right. But again, we have basketball players, for instance, who get paid millions of dollars, and they get a ball and have a free throw. No one is obstructing you, and they can make that shot. They get
like
paid,
a free space and bingo.
You're getting paid $40 million.
It's a bad game, is the thing.
The last thing in the sports bag is the failure of regional sports networks.
Like the Bally's?
Bally's just went belly up.
But not the... I can never figure out bankruptcy law, but they're the kind of belly up that they're still around for a while. Right, they haven't disappeared.
Yeah, they're not entirely out of business. They need to do a debt restructuring. The way that this worked was a few years ago when Disney was buying up the Fox property. Right, so Disney buys 20th Century Fox. Part of 20th Century Fox, or part of this whole Fox empire, included the Fox Sports regional networks, and Disney was not interested in getting into the regional sports network business because they were already heavily invested in the ESPN infrastructure, right? That Disney also owns ABC and ESPN. Right. And so they weren't interested in getting into the regional sports network game. And I think it was something like 20 regional sports networks were included in this or were part of this Fox package that they decided to ultimately sell off to Sinclair. Sinclair is a collection of television affiliates spread out all over the country. They're generally bad in terms of their editorial vision. They're sort of like your local conservative reactionary Fox News. And like there are a couple of examples of Sinclair pushing out news coverage from the national level down to the local level that was less than ideal from a just the facts, ma'am, sort of perspective.
Were they the ones? Remember, there was like that video clip where all of the different affiliates, they had the same copy that they're reading off of, and they were talking about the dangers to whatever. But it was kind of weird and creepy just to see so many different.
Tim Burke from Deadspin put together that video. I think it's probably the most successful video he's ever put together. To the point where it's completely gotten out of his hands, and it's like reposted frequently to Reddit and Twitter and Facebook as proof of a great global news conspiracy that like but also it's most frequently posted by, because most conspiracy theorist types these days are reactionary conservative types, and so it's posted as proof of the way that the media is always walking in lockstep, when in reality it's closer to their ideology than they realize it is, in all likelihood.
Because a lot of times, and you're right, I've seen that video clip a bunch of times. I've never associated it with Deadspin or this person or whatever. So it's like the authorship has been lost. But you're right, it is presented as a critique of mainstream media, but these are just like these local affiliates that are owned by a right-of-center conglomerate.
I'll make sure there's a link to that video in the show notes if anybody wants to check it out. It is worth watching. Anyway, Sinclair is the group that decided they were going to buy up this collection of regional sports networks. And if you watch sports on your local cable package, you know what a regional sports network is. It's right now it would be Bally's. They used to be Fox Sports Southeast or Fox Sports
Region,
Midwest or whatever the fuck it was. Whatever your region was, you had one. NBC still has a handful of them, like the ones here in the DC area, I believe, are NBC affiliated in some way. The Braves were on Bally's. A bunch of other, I think it's 14 of the Major League Baseball teams are on the Bally's Sports Network. And this was not a deal where Sinclair bought it and paid cash and now it's failing. They sort of created a shell corporation and then borrowed a whole bunch of money in order to buy this product. So this was a $10.6 billion deal. They borrowed something approaching $9 billion of that $10.6 billion and got the other $1.5 billion from outside investors and ended up only putting in something like $1.5 billion themselves, I believe, in terms of upfront cash. And it has not worked out, as in many, many cases before of leveraged buyouts, which is what this essentially was. When you put that much debt on a product and then experience any amount of profit decline, you're going to be in big trouble when it comes to servicing that debt. Now, these have been profitable. Like basically all of the regional sports networks are in fact profitable and we're bringing in more money than they were spending. The problem is that because this deal happened in 2019 and then we had the COVID lockdowns and the cancellation of a whole bunch of games where MLB only played 60 games in 2020. Had that weird shortened season that they had. A lot of the advertising revenue dried up. Now, again, they made money. They made a huge pile of money in 2021. I don't have the number right in front of me. Let me see if I can pull that up. All right, so this sold for more than $10 billion in 2019, made more than $2 billion in revenue in the first 9 months of 2022, and more than $3 billion in revenue in all of 2021. So there was no shortage of revenue, and they were making a profit. The problem was that because profits were depressed, because of some increasing number of people are cord cutting, and therefore they're losing their subscriber base because all of these regional sports networks are on your local cable
like
affiliate.
Tied to, so you're not making a separate purchase for it. It's usually part of the package, right?
Right. Usually it's part of your whatever your local cable package is, but if people are cord cutting, then Bally's or Diamond is not getting the $8 out of you, the customer. That's part of your $180 monthly cable bill or whatever. And then you combine that with the fact that there were fewer games broadcast and therefore fewer advertising dollars came in. It all ends up resulting in fewer profits. But again, like to really stress this, they were still profitable entities. Right. It's just that they couldn't service that level of debt. And like this happens, this is not unique to the world of regional sports networks. This happens all the fucking time with these leveraged buyouts where somebody comes in and buys up Toys R Us or whatever and says, you might be profitable now that we've restructured you, but because profits are still declining, we're just going to have to close your store down because we can't afford to pay off this debt any longer. And it's just a shitty situation. And I found a couple of good articles about it that I'll make sure that I link to in the show notes. It's not going to impact anybody this year. As you alluded to, Abe, the networks are expected to stay on the air and continue delivering on the deals that they made with the teams to broadcast these games. The ultimate result of this maybe is if these regional sports networks are not viable long term, it's plausible that all of the streaming rights could revert back to the national leagues, right? Right. So Major League Baseball basically reclaims all of their broadcasting rights and then just sells MLB TV as a package to someone who lives in a local sports network, which for me probably would be better because then you never have to worry about blackouts, right? Yes. So like one of the annoying things about getting that I've complained about on the show before is you pay whatever $130, $150 a year to watch all of the baseball games, and then because your favorite team then travels to your local area, I can't watch every time the Braves play the Nationals, right?
Right.
It sucks.
Which it's not that local. It's 2 hours away.
It's a 2.5 hour drive. Like it requires an entire commitment to a whole day if I want to go watch the goddamn game, and I don't already subscribe to the local cable channel, which I don't because it's not on YouTube TV for some reason. Anyway, that would be one possible bright side to this, is if it all, I mean, not that you always necessarily want central control of these sorts of things, but the wave of the future is certainly streaming, and I have no problem with the further death of cable companies.
But
if that's what helps result in this.
So, I mean, you know, the NFL, there are fewer games than baseball and the other sports, hockey, basketball, but like they have a top-down kind of centralized system. I mean, they make deals as a league, and then everything goes through that. So it's not like, you know, the Yankees do their own thing, and then the Braves have the thing down here. Like, it's just like, hey, this is the deal. We signed a deal with Fox to air NFC games mostly, CBS to air AFC games mostly. Then the Monday night package goes to this company. Thursday night goes to Bezos. And we're all making money. We kind of chop up the money.
And nothing would preclude Major League Baseball from selling a package to whatever station in Atlanta decides that they want to run 50 games this year or something like that, right? Like if a local affiliate in Atlanta decides they want to broadcast Braves games, they can make a deal with Major League Baseball and do that. And then you factor in, like, also, this is going to be cheaper for Fox or whatever local affiliate wants to do it because they're also streaming these games in your same market.
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting story, and I'll make sure there are links to it in the show notes. That will wrap up the WGAS Sports Bag for now.
We can just say goodnight.
We could just say goodnight.
Because you don't have anything else to talk about.
I have so much other shit here.
You asked Abe what to talk about.
No.
It was a ruse, it turns out.
It was mostly because I didn't want to talk about the 3 different race stories that I have queued up here.
There are 3?
I have really great news for you. You don't have to talk about them.
So there's Scott Adams Dilbert guy who goes on his YouTube stream.
You're doing exactly what they want you to do if you talk about this.
Tells whites to no longer associate with blacks because there was a Rasmussen poll that came out that suggested that some 53% of black folks who were polled were not willing to say it's okay to be white. Like some small percentage, less than 20% or something, said explicitly it's not okay to be white. And then some further 30% were not sure if it's okay to be white. And I heard this presented, I've seen it all over social media for the last week or so, but I heard it presented on NPR today in like wildly unfair ways, which is not surprising. But of course, he also did this just to get attention.
Yeah,
so, like,
you're doing it.
The reason, like, but also the fact that the Rasmussen poll even exists in the first place. To be clear, this is not a question that should be asked of anyone, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what sort of.
Is this a question they've always asked? You know, like sometimes they have these like right track, wrong track. Are you better off? Like, do they always ask like it's okay to be white? And they compare.
I don't know because I couldn't drill down into the numbers because Rasmussen has this particular poll fucking paywalled, so I could not, unless I wanted to sign up to be a Rasmussen Pro or Rasmussen Plus or something. I couldn't actually look at the details and the history of this thing, so instead I just had to rely on news stories about it. And then NPR, of course, tries to frame it as white nationalists have used the phrase "it's okay to be white" to try to radicalize people online. It's like, no, that's not why Rasmussen was asking this fucking question. Like, and I'm sorry, but there are not black folks who are responding to this poll who are saying it's actually not okay to be white because they know that that's a phrase that white nationalists use to try to normalize anti-black racism. Like, you are doing so much fucking jujitsu to get around talking about whether or not people should be permitted to say, or that it's a moral position to say it's okay to be white. Like, it's just not a valid question in the first place, but also, like, whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't have to investigate and imagine that the reason that black folks were saying it's not okay to be white is because white nationalists are the ones pushing it's okay to be white. Like, that's not what's fucking happening there. And everybody trying to do the mind reading on this one is fucking crazy.
Now, there's an outside chance NPR has the Rasmussen Plus package, right? And they dug into the numbers, and that's what it was, but likely not, right?
Likely not. Also, Rasmussen is a shit goddamn polling organization who consistently found that, like, Donald Trump was going to win the election by 10 goddamn points. Like, not that it was going to be close, but, like, that Donald Trump was just winning everywhere, right? So, like, we can ignore them.
Did they predict it the first time?
They did, yeah.
Rasmussen was closer than anybody else because the other polls were generally so fucking bad. But, like, the idea that he was going to win, like that Donald Trump has more popular support, like, you cannot trust these people when it comes to gauging popular opinion, it seems.
The Rasmussen Twitter account I follow, mostly because whenever they release their daily numbers and all this stuff, they always have like a sponsor, and it's always like some fringe, like right wing, like book, and it's like, you know, liberals are gonna fucking stab your kids or something. It's like, here are this week's numbers brought to you by like that, like incendiary title, and it just always gets a chuckle out of me. It's like, okay.
So that was Scott Adams making a personal effort to get canceled, it seems. Like, that is the only...
It seems like that's working, right? I mean, I saw the headline that they said that they were starting to distance themselves with his Dilbert articles or comic strip.
His distributor has dropped him. He will not be published in any newspaper anywhere in the world any longer. And this is a guy, I don't know his net worth, but Dilbert has been around since 1989. It is a massive marketing operation, like, and merchandising operation. Maybe not as popular as it once was in like the late 90s and around the tech boom, and like when people thought office culture jokes of the Dilbert variety were funny.
Did he? Is he an example of like just he changed, or is it a grift kind of scheme that he's running? Because
it's not a grift. He's an interesting character.
I have a book by him that I like.
His books in the past, from what I've read,
I mean, from
the last
20
week or
years
two,
ago or something?
he's nothing like what he is, at least over the last 7 years. Because he was kind of on the Trump is a great persuader train early.
So he claims to be a political liberal, effectively.
Right.
He's sort of... He doesn't think of himself as a conservative, so whenever anybody describes him as a MAGA Trump supporter, he insists that they're just factually wrong about him.
And
I have no reason.
in the past.
Right.
But,
But no, even now, like, I don't like the way that he phrased. I don't know why we're talking about this, but even the way that he phrased his discussion of this poll was as a sort of subjunctive. Like, it was as a, if this is the case, then you would be crazy to, because, like, if in fact over half of black people don't think it's okay to be white, and you take his framing of that question as like half of black people hate white people, then yeah, in a way, it would be a little crazy to put yourself in a situation where you're surrounded by people who hate you because of the color of your skin. And I think what he's trying to do is frame the conversation in his what he imagines to be a clever way, but is in fact just a clumsy, trollish way of saying, this is the way that the mass media talks about white on black racism all of the time, right? And the thing that he's trying to do in his clever way is to point out the hypocrisy of that. Right. And he's not exactly wrong.
Not that clever.
He's not exactly wrong, but it's not terribly clever either.
But is it like he just can't read the room?
No, he is very clearly trying to not read the room.
Okay, but that's not a good way to be.
The whole game here is to get the mainstream media to freak out about him as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And who knows? I don't know. Like, I think he's going to be fine. I think he just gets a great fucking kick out of this shit. Very clearly, he thinks this is all hilarious, and that's fine for him. I just don't, beyond the Scott Adams of it, I don't know why this is a question being asked of anyone, by anyone. Right. It's a nonsensical question. Further, Angela Davis, the actual Marxist and former Black Panther person, was on Finding Your Roots last week with Henry Louis Gates. And I will go ahead and play the clip. Abe, I'm not sure if you saw this or not.
I did not.
Look, she's happy.
Angela Davis are descended from a patriot. Your fourth great-grandfather served in the Revolutionary War. And as you can see on the muster roll in front of you, he played the drums.
Yes.
So, when you were studying the American Revolution, did it ever occur to you that you could have an ancestor
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What do you do with that information now that you know that you are descended from someone who did, in fact, serve in the American Revolution?
Well, the American Revolution should have gone further than it actually did.
Without a doubt.
But I'm glad to be able to have this information.
Right.
Because, and one of the reasons, and I'm thinking off the top of my head right now.
Of course.
Because you only just threw all of this information at me.
We are improvising together.
But I'm remembering that so many people have called those of us who try to fight against racism and who have visions of a more radical democracy as un-American.
Yes.
And I've always insisted that the best way to pay tribute to this country is to try to change it and allow it to develop into the kind of a place where anyone can be free and equal and happy.
I'm with you.
So there's a sense in which I identify with the identity of the patriot, but it has to be a radical,
of course,
identification.
The most American thing you can do is to fight against injustice.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
By the way, she knew that she was going to be on this show, right? What do you mean this? You almost ambushed me, like
right. So the first part of the clip was there, but because she very clearly sort of starts to panic, you can see it in her eyes.
She wasn't expecting that.
That she was rattled by that, but she turns that into a pretty reasonable response, right? Like that develops into she's very practiced at this. She knows how to turn it back to her favor. This other clip is she's not as successful.
Okay.
Any idea what you're looking at? That is a list of the passengers on the Mayflower.
No, I can't believe this. No, my ancestors did not come here on the Mayflower.
Your ancestors came on the Mayflower.
No.
You are descended
no.
from one of the 101 people who sailed on the Mayflower.
Oof. That's a little bit too much to deal with right now.
Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think that you may have descended from people who laid
Never.
the foundation
Never.
for this country?
Never.
So, just to be clear, those were white people?
Yes, white people.
Okay. Because they never actually say, I mean, it's implied, but...
They say elsewhere that she has white ancestors.
Okay.
I don't think that was a surprise to me.
Was that part... So that part is not a surprise. She knows that she... going back, there were a mixture of people that were in her family tree.
She cannot handle, after a lifetime of activism, of talking about the original sin of this country, the fact that, I don't know that she has specifically said this, but I'm sure that she has said something along these lines, that the founding of this nation was an immoral act, that it was it was an act of aggression against people who were already here, and that we have, by virtue of wiping them out and stealing their land, and then further enslaving African Americans for hundreds of years after that we have committed horrible acts. But the we in that was never that personal for her before. She is constantly identified with the oppressed in her retelling of American history and the way that the American Revolution and up until the Civil War, and no doubt everything up until the Civil Rights and everything that's followed since then, the way that she has identified is with the victims of that oppression, not as she probably has paid lip service to it in the past,
Yes.
like as a beneficiary of in some certain way, but like she's never been confronted with it, and like it's worth it to watch the video. I'll make sure the link, of course, is in the show notes. But like the panic in her face and in her voice, it seems genuine,
right?
And like she literally doesn't know how to deal with the fact that all of these things that she's said in the past about America's sin and the way that she conceives of responsibility carrying on down through the generations implicates her in a way that she's never considered before.
Right.
And I doubt it. She's an old lady now, but it would bring me some amount of satisfaction to imagine that this would impact or change the way that she imagines the world going forward in some small way.
You know what's interesting is that with her reaction being the way it is, that did she think other people who had a connection through family, like, I mean, this is hundreds of years ago, that they had some responsibility or some culpability in what somebody else did before they were even born? Like, it's kind of like, why should it matter? I mean, this would be just like a trivial, like, oh, that's fun. That's interesting. I did not know that I came that way. But, like, it wouldn't change her argument in any way, the things that happened before.
And crucially, it doesn't change her personal moral accountability or culpability for anything.
Right.
You are responsible. I know it's a radical fucking concept, but to the extent that you're responsible for anything or can be held accountable for anything, it has to only be your own behavior and decisions and choices. To the extent that we believe that you're actually the master of those things, I don't know.
Right.
But from a legal standpoint, we tend to say you have to be responsible for those things, right? In order for society to go on functioning, even if we don't necessarily think that free will is all it's cracked up to be. But like the notion, and this is something that I don't think that she's ever considered it before, but like the idea that I could be personally culpable for or responsible for or owe anyone anything for things done by people who came 400 or 500 years before me, when like the family tree gets fucking crazy, by the way. Like there's so many fucking people who are in your ancestral line because of the way this works, right? Like in the way that you used to hear about how like 35 of the presidents all share a common ancestor.
Right, they're all
or
like
something
fifth cousins
like that,
or some random thing. Yeah.
Right, like Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, you only have to go back 7 generations or something, and they're
I think like
related.
Cheney and Obama, like there's some sort of weird, like if you go far back enough.
Right. And like that, it's fucking utterly meaningless. It's just a cool piece of trivia that's based on the way that species propagation works. Right. So, but like the idea that there's any sort of moral weight to any of that stuff has always driven me up a fucking wall. And it's why my old like indigenous since when, right? It's the like all of it is just fucking nonsense. And to watch it play out on her face was enjoyable. You know
what probably makes it worse in a weird way, is that she would have probably been, and not to put words into her mouth, but like I wouldn't be surprised if there was white elements in your family tree after the settlement, like through like rape and that would be it would go down easier to say, because it doesn't disrupt the overall theory that you know they were victimized and this happened and there is some European whatever in you, but it was through like rape, right? But now this is before that, right? So this is like people who decided to participate in this, and your connection is to that. But again, there is no responsibility that you bear, just like no one else bears the responsibility.
I'm not mad at Angela Davis for that. But neither should any of the people who work in the African Studies department of wherever she teaches be angry at her for that. Right? Like it's an insane thing to do to try to hold somebody to moral account.
Unexamined belief that, or maybe it is examined for some. An unexamined belief is that there is responsibility to bear for some people. Like if there was a direct line to that, which is faulty. This is not related, but it reminds me of a story that was just in the news where there was this border agent in the U.S. This guy was working for the Border Patrol. He would deport a bunch of people who were not legally allowed to be in America. For like 20 years, he would do this. I think this was like a story in This American Life also. I don't know if they were talking about somebody else, but this border agent was very adamant about you don't belong here. You don't have the paperwork. Fuck you. No sympathy. He had no qualms about disrupting families and doing all this stuff. And lo and behold, it turns out he also was not legally here. And so they processed him out, and he's like, oh, fuck. Like, I am what all along I was hating. I kind of probably fucked up his outlook himself. But, like, it can be good to tie your identity around these kind of external things. And that's why earlier when we're talking about sports, I wouldn't be surprised if people have their identity tied towards those records. People think in weird ways. Like, they identify with things. Like, if you told me, like, my great whatever was like a genocidal maniac, I'm like, oh, fuck that guy. Like, that's got nothing to do with me.
Right. Like, what is, and I have a much more radically departed view of even my very near ancestors.
Right.
Like, I like, which is not to say that I don't love my parents and love my grandparents, and of course, like, I know those people.
Right.
Those are people that I know.
That's a line to draw. Yeah. People that you know.
But once we go past, like, I have no memory even of my great-grandfather on my father's side. Like, I'm sorry, he died when I was very, very young. And, like, I'm interested in hearing his story.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. But, like, his father or his father, like, I'm sorry, it has no impact on me whatsoever. It's purely interesting from an academic standpoint, but it doesn't do anything for me in terms of, like, my heritage or my ancestry or any of that shit. I'm sorry, I just don't care. I'm much more interested in what's actually happening in the world now.
That's much more sustainable than the other ways of thinking, I think.
Real quick, Fox News Dominion lawsuit. I'm sure that you've seen this if you follow any news whatsoever, but the Tucker Carlson's and Laura Ingram's and Sean Hannity's over there at Fox were talking in private text messages and behind the scenes at Fox about what a complete load of shit the election denialism of 2020 was, that Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani were crazy people who were constantly lying to them, and that's what they were saying in private, and then they were going on the air and not saying that, and
they would bring them
entertaining,
on. Right, they would bring them on.
Entertaining the MyPillow guys' insane theories and Sidney Powell's insane theories about the Kraken and the Venezuelans and the Hugo Chavez's, long dead, who were secretly controlling American elections. And it's just a perfect example of a news organization who's much more concerned with telling the audience what they want to hear rather than what's actually happening, because their concern is not with disseminating what's actually happening, but rather with cohering to a narrative that their audience already cares for in order to keep their audience watching. And if you think that this is a problem that is exclusive to Fox News, then you're out of your goddamn mind, right? This is not, which is not to downplay how awful what Fox News did with regards to this stuff actually was. And I hope that they have to fork over billions of dollars because of it, right? Like, there's not, like, free speech be damned in this case. It's not okay to tell lies that you know are lies in the guise of news coverage. That has nothing to do with free speech, actually. You're busy defaming people and libeling people, then that's not okay. But if you think that that's just something that is the domain of the dirtbags at Fox, again, I think you're living in a dream world.
I mean, there were many people that were that looked bad, but I think what Tucker Carlson, like, his interest in all of this was just the bottom line. Other people at Fox News were making similar points where, like, oh, they're bullshit. You know, the crackpot lawyers that we have on, they're full of shit. Laura Ingraham was kind of saying the same thing. But Tucker was allowing this to, like, the stock market. Like, there was a reporter for Fox News that would clarify and say that there's no evidence to support this, kind of play it straight like a normal person would, and say, fire this person.
Not even on the air. She just tweeted about how, like, what Sidney Powell said on Fox here is nonsense.
Right.
And she just tweets out that small correction.
Right. And he wanted her fired, and he...
Right. Does she not realize what she's doing to the brand, what she's doing to the stock price?
Exactly. So their concern is the price of the stock, and also they're worried about if we tell them what we know to be true, right, which is what we're doing in this like WhatsApp group or whatever they're communicating, we are going to lose viewers to Newsmax or some other outlet that would be willing to say it. So like they're basically trying to pander to an audience who would be receptive to it, and other outlets probably have a similar way to go about it. Maybe they're not so crude about it or so just transparent about it.
The thing I always ask when we watch Fox News, which is sometimes, rarely to sometimes, the thing I constantly ask you is like, they can't be serious, right? Like,
right.
They're just full of shit. And you're like, no, they actually believe it. Like, I don't think that they do.
It depends on who the they is, right? So, like,
And
Tucker
what
is doing a thing, right? And specifically what the question is. But, like, Tucker is spectacular at the thing that he does, and largely that is delivering to his audience the red meat that they show up to his show to feast on. And sometimes he has a legitimate point, and that's when I'm most horrified by it, right? Is because if he is given the opportunity by a failure of the rest of the press to do what he does, right? And even if he's only right 1 out of 10 times, which is he doesn't even bat at that high of a batting average.
But the problem though isn't the yardstick isn't getting it right or wrong. It seems like, does it align with an existing worldview, right? And sometimes the right thing does align with it. And when that happens, they'll go with that. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. They'll go with the other.
And
way.
I don't know how any self-respecting human being who cares about what's actually going on in the world could ever watch the primetime Fox News lineup again when it is in fact in black and white in front of your face that they were lying to you in order to make you happy. Like that's weird to me that you would debase yourself as a so-called news consumer and go on watching that shit after that's what's been made clear to you. And it's not the first time that Tucker Carlson has made it clear to you. In a previous lawsuit, he talked about how his job is not to give the news, his job is to be an entertainer. And this goes even further than that. He's willing to just tell lies in order to maintain his audience. And like, you should be personally insulted by that fact.
Right. I do wonder though, like, I don't think that either of those or any of those primetime shows are going to lose viewers because of this, right? You don't think that?
No, of course not.
So
absolutely not.
That doesn't matter, and it seems like their position is, and I think maybe it would be helpful if everyone kind of saw it the same way, which is all of those cable news outlets, that primetime lineup, or even the morning lineup, or whatever, they are trying to shape the news cycle, right? They're not like just telling you the news. Basically, whatever is out there, they try to shape it in such a way that fits something that they expect the audience to be into. That's all it is. It's kind of shaping.
I don't think that they're true believers. Like, I think that, like, Laura Ingraham truly believes in the conservative project of Ronald Reagan and the people that came before her I believe all of that. But I don't think that she actually believes the shit that she's saying. I truly think her main concern is having good ratings and continuing to get a paycheck from Fox News. And the same goes for Tucker, obviously. Hannity is just sort of a dope. Like, he's just a fucking dummy who does what he does, but he knows his fucking market, right? So, but what... And I do think that they all do generally hold to a standard issue set of conservative beliefs that you would probably assign to them, right? Like, I don't think that they're fake in that way.
Yes.
But I'm weirdly less bothered by the naked capitalism of it all when it comes to the Fox News people than I am by the moral authoritarianism of the same exact thing that happens from the other side, which is that, like, the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world and the much more mainstream, the ABC, CBS, and NBC news outlets, the typical mainstream media that we would talk about derisively much of the time, is not aware that they're doing the thing that Fox is so clearly aware that they're doing, and instead tends to hang it on this sanctimony of just being right about things, right? That they are doing the right thing, that they have some sort of moral duty to go on doing the right thing, and that's what they hang their hats on. But that's not true. And it allows them to say things that are in fact not true. and to discount things like, for example, the lab leak theory, which was the Department of Energy, I think, for some reason. There's something I don't know why they're the ones that we turn to for these sorts of questions. But the United States Department of Energy is one of another federal agency that has decided that it's more likely than not. They have a low confidence feeling that it's more likely than not that it was not a zoonotic origin for COVID-19.
They have a low confidence feeling that it's more likely than not. What?
What's weird is that they have a low confidence, but they're confident that it wasn't intentional, right? It seems like they're like this was an inadvertent or some sort of leak through a lab, but it wasn't like bioterrorism or whatever. Like this is just
it's just the amount of qualifiers.
Right.
Like, is this
this is what you have to super overqualify everything when you spent years insisting that it was racism to suggest
I don't think
that
that's
this
why
leaked out of
that's
a
not
lab.
it. This is Julia's job. She deals in levels of confidence of threats all the time.
Right.
But like, why don't they say that they're confident that it did? They can't. It's too many negatives.
Right, but the problem, I think it just was low confidence that it was a lab leak, not like low confidence that more likely. I think it's just low confidence that it was a lab leak.
But if it's low confidence that it was a lab leak, that's not saying it was.
Right. Except though, I think the reason why the confidence isn't any higher is because China has kind of prevented any sort of digging into, right? So they're kind of using imperfect evidence to draw these conclusions. So I don't know, in a few years, is there a chance that they can get more evidence that they can raise it to high confidence or certainty?
Right. New intelligence has prompted the Energy Department to conclude that an accidental laboratory leak in China most likely caused the coronavirus pandemic. I don't have a problem with the semantics there. They're just not entirely confident of it.
Yeah, that's more straightforward. But again, it is weird how they qualified it with a low confidence, but like whatever it is, they're certain that it's so they're ruling out intentional. Because like no one would want what country, what rational actor would intentionally release this, right? Is that their thinking? Like, are they just like how do they know that it was accidental?
Well, because I think that there are plenty of other investigations out there that suggest that this was the Wuhan lab in particular was doing science that should have, like, let's imagine, I don't know the numbers because, again, not an expert, but from what I've heard and read about this, imagine there's a 5-point scale of biohazard safety. I don't think there is. I think there's 4. But imagine that there's a 5-point scale and that this is work that should have been done at 4, at the next to most extreme level of biohazard safety. And instead they were doing this work at a 2 in this lab, right? And then you combine that with the fact that this thing was spreading in October or November of 2019, and they've never been able to find an animal that had this, and further, this thing did not mutate in a way that is consistent with it being of zoonotic origin, and combine that with the fact that the Chinese have been incredibly non-forthcoming with any of this information or allowing any of their records or the labs to be investigated.
And Ground Zero is right next to where this lab is.
Ground Zero is right there.
Yeah.
Right. And like, again, to tie it to the not to tie it explicitly to the Fox News thing, but like this was something that you would be denounced as a racist, as Donald Trump was, for suggesting that it might have come from a lab in China. And again, I don't think it was helpful for Donald Trump to talk about this in terms of China did this to us, and Tom Cotton to say things about how this could be a military bioweapon unleashed on us by the, like, that to me was never okay to raise that level of rhetoric based on what we knew. But again, to suggest, as like the classic now Jon Stewart clip where he goes on the Colbert Show on CBS and just lays it out as plainly as you can, where he's like, so wait, you're telling me that it came from a bat or a pangolin, despite the fact that there was this lab literally in that same city, like down the street,
Right.
That did this exact sort of research. To be clear, if there's a conspiracy here, the reason that we haven't found out more about this is because there's probably some National Institute of Health money funded through various grants to private agencies that eventually made its way to the sort of work that was going on in Wuhan. Maybe not necessarily that exact work, right? I don't think that we can say Fauci lied and people died, right? That Fauci is personally responsible for funding the research that led to the coronavirus pandemic. That seems unlikely. But it seems plausible to me that because of the way that this sort of work gets funded, the U.S. probably spent some money on work very similar to this, if not this exact work. And so maybe we're not, as a country, terribly interested in getting to the exact bottom of this. And I wonder, to some extent, how much of the sort of raised tensions between China and the United States over the course of the last few months, including with this balloon nonsense and all the talk about Taiwan, is perhaps somehow related to like neither one of us really wanting to come out and finger the other for our culpability in terms of developing or in terms of this thing leaking out of some lab in China.
Right. I do think on the attribution early on, it was to assign blame, right? It was like, this country did this to us. And it wasn't like inadvertent whatever, right? But the reaction at first was like, not only is that not correct, absent any information, I'm just saying it's not correct, right? You can't post about it. You can't link to it. Like, I think all of those things people just need to revisit and just say, just be a little more humble. You can make the case that, hey, you have no evidence to support that. That was like that would have been a firm position to take 2-3 years ago, right? Because at the time, there was no evidence. But when you categorically say something isn't true without any information, there's a possibility that this happens. Now, if it is...
And further, then assign the stain of racial hatred to anybody who brings it up.
Right. That's not helpful either, right? But the environment in where all of this is happening, no one's behaving in the right way. People are kind of... the Kung Flu thing, what was that? I mean, if somebody drew a connection to racial animus, like, that wouldn't be far-fetched. Like, why are you saying it that way, right? But if these major countries are fucking around in their lab, like creating things, and sometimes things get out of the lab, it could have been worse than this, right? Because, there are like, viruses that are worse than this, but like it didn't spread as far as this virus did, right? So like if somebody was tweaking something at one of these labs without all the safety precautions, and it was like some weird version of Ebola, like whomever gets infected, they're dead. But like,
I think the major lesson of this pandemic, despite the millions dead, is like this could have been way worse.
It could have been so much worse from the beginning.
Lucky.
We said that,
and it was plenty bad. But it
was plenty bad. But it certainly could have been way worse if it didn't just kill fat people and old people.
If it
overwhelmingly
killed kids, if it had targeted children, it would have been awful.
Yeah, and I don't think it's along these same lines. Remember the Cochrane study that we talked about a few weeks ago about the masks?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That group came out and did a meta-analysis of masking and decided that in the real world, masks don't have an impact because of the way that they're worn more than anything else. That you cannot say that there has not – basically what the study says is there has not been a major study that proves that in the real world masking works. And – as I said at the time when we first discussed it, I couldn't find any major reputable outlets discussing it. And in the weeks since, I have seen the coverage expand basically to include a dumping on the study entirely, right? It's only been things that have said, well, but masks do work if you wear them right. It's like, yeah, but you're not understanding. You're very clearly still doing the thing that you've been doing all along and trying to stake out the moral position as being the correct position, and only doing so in the interests of flattering your audiences because you don't want to insult them after 3 years of telling them they have to wear masks and that they're good for wearing masks.
Right. And also,
it's very late now.
Yeah. Also, anything that runs counter to your personal experience or the way you look at things is going to be questions. I mean, when all of the, hey, this is a dangerous virus and precautions should be taken. People on the individual level, if they got the virus and nothing came of it, they would say they're blowing it way out of proportion. But like, if you take the public health view, it is a dangerous thing, right? Similarly, there are people who have been wearing masks, right, all this time. They've taken all the precautions, and they staved off an infection for like 2-3 years, right? And they're saying, "What are you talking about? Clearly, the mask is what did it, and now you're telling me that it had no role. How is it that I never got it and all my friends did?" Right? So it's like, I'm not going to believe this stupid study.
It is curious that at work, when we had our little mini outbreak, when I was still wearing a mask, I didn't get it, but a lot of people who weren't in the break room specifically did.
So it's like, how do you?
It's like, okay, I believe your study. I'm still going to wear it because these people are disgusting.
Right. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Facebook or Twitter. I don't know why I say that, because nobody ever does, and that's fine. I don't blame you. You just head over to brainiron.com for a show note and whatever else your little heart desires. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig. Head over to tetramurmusic.com for more of him. Mark Gillig, who got engaged this week.
Look at that.
In Hawaii.
Congrats.
You should have just gotten married, Mark. You've made a terrible mistake. Now you have to have like a fucking wedding and stuff.
He likes things.
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's fine. I'm happy for them and the happy couple, but fucking weddings, man. Abe, did you go to the movies this week? Ant-Man and the Wasp and the
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yes,
and the bad black fella.
I went to go see Ant-Man 3, and I went to go see Cocaine Bear.
Oh, nice.
The Ant-Man movie, a totally forgettable, nonsensical movie. Like, I did not watch the first two. I just printed like 3 pages of what happened before, and I got the gist.
Oh, good.
Right?
Good.
And the movie is just
important context.
Yeah, it's like, all right, why is this happening and all that stuff? But the movie doesn't make any sense. Like, these Marvel movies, they need to retool what they're doing, because they build up the bad character, like the villain. Like the first act is like, this guy's unstoppable. He's like getting rid of everybody, and then by the end, somebody punches him in the face, and that's it. It's like, all right, that's the end of the movie.
Well, we're in phase 5, I think, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Probably should have ended it with the end game.
If you have to say we're in phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you believe that you are way more important than you actually are, even in the minds of the people who continue to go see your goddamn movies, right?
Yeah.
And this movie made a big pile of money the first weekend and then dropped right the fuck off, right? Because everybody who wanted to go see it saw it the first week, and then nobody's going to see it after this. And I agree with you. It's time to be done.
Right.
Like, they need to just do something else.
But they're not done. They're going to
This was always a shitty roster of superheroes, by the way. Not to go off on Marvel here, but like, there's Spider-Man, and then Iron Man was cool, but only because Robert Downey Jr. was there to breathe life into the character. Nobody cares about these fucking characters. I'm sorry.
Maybe Captain America, but even he is kind of like, who cares?
Lame goddamn ripoff of Superman.
Lame.
Get the fuck out of here.
All right, so on the Cocaine Bear it is exactly
what
the title suggests. Like, it is literally just a bear on cocaine, and he's fucking everybody up, just mauling people on cocaine.
I worry with this movie, which looked fun when I saw the trailer. My concern is that it can't possibly be more fun than the trailer. Like once you enjoy the trailer, not to say that like all of the gags or all of the stunts are revealed in the trailer, but like, oh yeah, it's funny. There's a fucking bear, and he's fucked up on cocaine, and he fucks with people, and I'll bet that's fun. But then I was like, but for 90 minutes?
Right.
Like, I got a pretty good laugh out of 2.5 minutes. I don't know if it can sustain.
They were able to stretch it out for a 90-minute thing. 2 things. One, the parts that they don't show in the trailer, this theater was packed, by the way, more so than second week Ant-Man 3, right? Ant-Man 3 was like, 40, 50% full. This is like almost 100%. And the weird thing is that there were a lot of kids there, like 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, a lot of them in this theater watching this movie. And what they don't show in the trailer is that when the bear mauls people, he mauls people. Like, just, you see stomach linings out. Just like, it is one of the goriest things that you'll see. And these parents are bringing these little kids to this movie? I don't know if they just saw the trailer and like, oh, let's show my kid a cocaine bear.
On the other hand, like, it's not John Wick. It's not like he's killing. It's not like it's a guy with a gun killing 140 people over the course of 87 minutes or something.
I mean, it is a don't do drugs.
Natural. It's just nature. It's in the bear's nature.
Don't do drugs.
Right.
And also don't mess with bears.
Right. So
both, it's good lessons.
So the cocaine is doing the cocaine. The bear is doing the cocaine, and there are people that's out and about at this national park, and some of them are innocent, just passersby, just like these foreigners from Europe. They're like, "Oh, look, we came to America, and the first time we're on this fucking hike, we see a bear. Isn't this great?" And the bear is like, "Oh, I'm gonna fuck them up," and he fucks them up. Like, they're innocent people. I mean, John Wick. They're all mutual participants in this violence, right?
Yeah, I think I'd sooner show my child a bear mauling a person than I would show my child John Wick doing 13 headshots in 11 seconds. Not the way this cocaine bear did it. I'm telling you, watch whenever it comes out on the streaming, whatever. It is a violent way to kill, just blood and gore. This is loosely based on a true story too, right?
I mean, there's only one part of the story is true where there was some sort of dumping of cocaine and it fell somewhere, but there's no evidence that a bear took the cocaine. And by the end of the movie, his little cubs, the little bears are doing cocaine too. Everybody's doing cocaine.
there are crack baby bears in this goddamn movie. Oh,
they're just running around or whatever. But before the movie, they were doing the trailers, and there was a trailer for a movie called Strays, like Stray Dogs, right? It is basically like almost like a live action of the actual dogs, voiced over by like known people, like like a Kevin Hart or whatever.
Like Homeward Bound.
Yeah, sure. But I have never seen a trailer get such a reaction from the audience. They ate it up. They were laughing so much. And I don't know if it's just the dogs, just these cute little dogs, and then like the voice actors are cursing at each other. It's just like that threw them off. And maybe
this is a grown-up movie for the.
It is, but remember there are a lot of 7 to 8-year-olds in that theater. So I've watched a lot of movies, and I've had to sit through all through these trailers. I was startled by. They were laughing the whole 90 It was like, what the fuck is like happening? Like, maybe they're all on cocaine themselves, but they were really into that trailer.
Did any small children run out of Cocaine Bear crying and screaming, or was it? But these are hard kids. Their parents know them. That's fine.
Halfway through, some of the kids were running around the up and down because they couldn't sit.
Sounds right.
Not acceptable. No. That's why you go to the Alamo, where they kick those bums out. Anything else that you watched?
No,
you want to talk about this week?
I tried to squeeze in Jesus Revolution. I couldn't. I'll try to watch it this week. But that did pretty well in the box office.
We watched Spider-Man from 2002 with the children.
Oh, nice.
It's still good.
How did the kids like it?
Tobey Maguire. Kids loved it. Although for some reason insist that Iron Man is better, which I
it's only because
disagree
the movie ends. He can't say anything nice. Movie ends. It's a great movie. Way better than Iron Man. Just like, okay.
That was the most recent Marvel movie that we've watched.
Yeah, but you could just leave it.
It was obviously
nice.
better. And it's like a real movie. It's not some stupid, like, stakes-free superhero movie. I mean, it's still a silly goddamn comic book movie, ultimately. But like, it's made by Sam Raimi. It's got plenty of, like, Sam Raimi flavor in it, to the point of being just ridiculous at times, but in an enjoyable way, where it's got, like, it's got flavor and character. It's good. And a second one is obviously a good movie, too. I don't think I've ever seen the third one all the way through.
The third one is weird.
Yeah.
And I think I like it more than the second one, which it's just because I like it more. It's a very weird, bad movie, but it's weird.
Is that the one where he's dancing around, changing clothes?
It's the one where he's weird emo.
Yeah.
He's like emo evil Spidey for a few minutes. Yeah.
Like, do stuff.
And we'll watch the next couple. The second one, of course, is widely regarded as one of the greatest superhero comic book movies of all time. Sort of universally beloved. And then the third one was a disappointment, relatively speaking, although made more money than either of the first two.
But sometimes it's like a delayed reaction. Sometimes the next movie does numbers based on the previous movie, right? Just based on expectation.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And I always wanted to be fucking Spider-Man. So when I was 19 and that movie came, like it's such a weird movie too, because it comes out on the heels of 9/11, like the next summer, I think.
Yeah, there's a big
after
America
9/11,
vibes in it.
And it even has like New Yorkers, like being New Yorkers, and it's like trying to explain to the kids, like, there was a time when everybody just fucking loved New Yorkers because of what happened on 9/11. It's not like that anymore. No. Those are obnoxious people. But for a while there, like the battery throwing and brick throwing New Yorker had a certain charm after 9/11. Like, you want to mess with us? We'll throw our batteries at you, you green goblin piece of shit. And everybody cheers. And then, of course, the final shot of the film is Spidey going up on the Empire State Building next to the American flag. And all of that. Anyway, it's a good movie, and a like an actual movie, not like the Ant-Man 4. What else did we watch? Anything?
We've been watching that show still.
Yeah, we watched 2 more episodes of Years and Years
and
on
we started
HBO.
a Christian movie, even though we didn't finish it.
Yeah, and we watched some shitty Amazon Prime Jesus movie.
But it's shot in Athens,
which was filmed in
no
and around
kidding. What's it
Athens,
called?
Georgia. Yeah. What was it called?
Small Group.
Small Group. It's on Athens, or it's on Amazon.
Athens.
It's on Amazon Prime, and it's not even. It's just sort of boring. Like, it's not as bad.
No, none of them are as good as the good ones.
It's not bad enough to be good in some ways. It's still it's dreadful, but it's not like enjoyably dreadful. And then, of course, we have The Last of Us, which, in my opinion, delivered the worst episode of the season so far.
Really? You didn't like it? It was very laid back until it wasn't.
Bob hates teenage girls.
All right.
So much.
You want to qualify this as a teenage girl problem.
You did that.
What was the objection?
I have a problem with teenagers acting as though they know what the fuck they're doing and not being interrogated for that fact. I mean, granted, yes, there are great consequences to their foolish decisions made throughout this episode, but it's not just teenage girls; it's teenagers writ large that I have problems with.
We watched Spider-Man.
Yeah,
full of teenagers.
So, okay, this kind of fills in some things because this is where the bite happens, right?
Right. She gets bitten for the first time and doesn't die.
They're both bitten, and they didn't show it, but like I take it that when her friend turns, she was going to shoot her or just like leave her in the mall to play Mortal Kombat.
We don't know what happens.
Yeah.
Presumably, the friend turns while she's still there, and I guess that she has to shoot her or otherwise run away. I don't know if we'll get an extended ending to this flashback
I don't think we will.
scene. I don't think we'll ever find out.
And this ties into then Fedra capturing her. That's where they realize, oh, she's not infected. She's immune. And it ties into like the beginning of the show, right? Where they have her under
Right. So this
arrest.
is how. So yeah, presumably the Fireflies realize that she was bit 3 days ago or something by the time that they find her, and then they chain her up against the wall to see if she's ever going to turn, and then we lead into the events of the show from there. And yeah, like I guess suppose that's satisfying in some way to go back to the beginning and find out how the story started. But in terms of this episode, like I was just bored by it. I know this is a silly criticism about a show that's based on a video game, but all of the dialogue felt like video game dialogue to me. Like I just didn't fucking care. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't particularly revealing or nuanced or good. It was just boring, stupid television, and I did not care.
I read online that it was kind of beat for beat from the video game, so maybe that's what kind of you didn't like. The one aspect of I liked the episode. The one thing I did not like, I wanted an answer to the Pedro Pascal guy falls over the horse. Oh boy, I'm bleeding out. Womp womp. Right? Episode ends. The episode begins, and now he's situated in some sort of barn or house or something. Like, how did
seemingly in the basement of some house, and how the fuck did they get there? Who knows?
They just did the cut scene you cut and you drink your energy juice that you have stored because you've been playing the game for so long. You've stored up your energy juice.
Yeah.
You keep feeding. Health goes down. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Keep feeding him the health points till you can do your flashback.
Right. And by the way, of all of the things that break your suspension of disbelief, for it to be like, how did he drag himself some hundreds of yards to some house that they found. Relative to like, oh, she just turns the lights on at the mall and everything fucking works again after 18 years. Right. Like that's where my suspension of disbelief was just fucking done. Like, I'm sorry, but the fucking carousel and all of the incandescent light bulbs on it, they don't work after 18 years. And the film in that photo booth that they go and do, that doesn't work yeah, they show that it's faded, but bullshit. That doesn't fucking work at all after 18 years.
Mostly left alone after the initial rush, right? At least that's how they do
you know how quickly shit descends into its broken state? How quickly chaos takes over and reigns after it is not cared for even the briefest periods of time? There's no way any of that shit fucking works anymore. Impossible.
And that was so not a big fan of the episode.
No.
And there's we're not even getting a clean 10 episodes. It's 9. They're cutting it at 9. So we only get.
Was this 7 or 8?
This was 7. Next one is 8. And I heard the final episode, the 9th episode, is like 40 some odd minutes. It's not even like a longer, let's tie everything up.
For them, take the time you need and not more and not less. Do it in the amount of time you need.
Anyway, beautiful production design. That is the full credit that I will give to the show. The mall looked fantastic. It looked correctly lived in terms of like it wouldn't surprise me if they had just aged a mall for 18 years.
Or just went to a current mall.
Or just went to the mall and put out some cobwebs because malls are pretty bleak these days anyway. But aside from my appreciation of the production design, it's a shitty episode of TV, and I don't care about you, Ellie, or your dead girlfriend. Don't care at all. Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
I guess that's all we've got for tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later. I mean, she's basically going to be the show, right? You got to get on this train, Bob. There's no way that the Pedro guy's going to live for too long. Like, look at him. He's already wounded.
She's got to have another register besides anger. Like, I just, and the actress herself, she's spectacular. When that bite happens,
when she
and she looks at it and she rubs it, and she gets that fucking rage at the unfairness of it all. Like, that's amazing. And she does. It's the same register that she has in HBO in the Game of Thrones. Like, it's that.
Oh, that's right.
Like, the righteous fury of her is spectacular. The rest of it. Like, they had no chemistry for me. Like, I don't know, it's weird of a 40-year-old dude to critique the chemistry of a couple of teenage lesbians.
This is also the guy who earlier that day I came home and he was playing Spider-Man, the video game, and you have to be Mary Jane for a little while. And I said, "Oh, how's that going?" And he said, "She's not taking her clothes off and playing with herself, so it sucks."
That was a joke. That was clearly a joke and not representative of my actual feelings.
Bob just loves women. Just all the respect.
Did you buy the episode 3 with the 2 dudes? You bought that love story, but not the 2 teenagers?
Yeah, those are men.
That was spectacular.
Those are men, Abe.
And well acted and well written and believable.
A pattern is emerging.
This was not.
I'm gonna keep track of this.
Bullshit. A pattern is emerging. I have an objective standard that I'm applying to both episodes. One of them was well written and objectively good. One of them was poorly written, poorly performed, and objectively bad. Gender has less than no impact here. I will acknowledge I have a certain amount of disdain for the characters based on their age, but that's
so it's an age thing. Okay. Fair enough.
With Cast Iron Brains, you can count on thoughtful, engaging conversations that will challenge your assumptions and expand your horizons. So buckle up, because we're about to take you on a wild ride through the ups and downs of the 21st century.
You should feed it prior intros that you've written and say like that, and the robot will figure it out.
I guess, because that's fucking dreadful. So a few weeks. So
Gosh, you couldn't save it for next week and not just don't read the news all week, and then just pretend that we're in this week.
All right.
Next week.
So this is a graph of